I'm Julia. I'm the technical manager at Wildcare, and this is Neil Middleton from Batability. How are you doing today?
I'm not doing too bad at all. The sun's shining. It's a bit cold at night still, so I've still got to have my first encounter with my first bat of 2021.
Oh, wow.
But I'm very, very busy, so it's kind of good if it stays cold for about another week and a half. That'll suit me from that point of view.
I take it it's quite cold up in Scotland. Is that where you're based?
Yeah, centre belt of Scotland. At the moment, we're typically down to 1, 2, maybe 3 degrees overnight. During the day, we're probably sitting about 9, 10, 11 degrees this week during the day. Yeah.
Okay. And so what temperature do bats like to sort of come out of hibernation?
Okay, so it's not so much that, although, yeah, it's a bit that, but generally bats tend to be active when insects are active.
Yeah.
And different insect species become active at different temperatures. And the bog standard temperature for a lot of insect species to become active is round about 6 degrees. And then when you get to about 8 degrees, you have a whole swathe of other insects that apparently become active at that point. So from the point of view of bat activity levels at this time of year, you would pretty much want the temperature when it's dark to be no less than 6 degrees, I would suggest. Okay, so anything more than 6 would potentially be good for bats at this time of year. Yeah.
So thinking about what you do then, you work for Batability, or you're the director, I should say. So what is it? What kind of services do you offer people?
Okay, well, before Batability, I ran an ecological consultancy called Ecosecology. And in 2017, I came away from Ecosecology. I set up Batability, and Batability is a training, people development organization. Also do a little bit of our own funded research and do writing, got books on the go and stuff that have been published or going to be published. But by and large, Batability is a training organization for people that are primarily interested in bats, but we do other bat-related, ecology-related, and business-related training as well. So whole load of things there in Batability. Yeah.
So what sort of thing inspired you into sort of bringing about Batability?
Oh, well, my interest in bats probably started almost 30 years ago. I wasn't a professional bat person at all until about 2006. That's when I launched Ecosecology. After I decided to retire from Ecos, not retire from work and life, but retire from Ecos, there was a certain aspect of what I was doing under the Ecos banner that I really enjoyed, and that was the people development side of things. So I took the people development training service from Ecos, and that then got branded Batability within my other business. So Batability isn't actually a business in its own right. It's a brand that sits under a business that's called Time for Bespoke Solutions, which is my business. And Time for Bespoke Solutions is a business consultancy training company, and Batability is a brand that sits underneath that business name, so to speak. Yeah. So it's just what I've always done, I say always, I've been involved in training people or assisting people or developing people in bat-related matters.
Yeah.
Probably for in excess of 20 years. Okay. And I've been doing bats for about 6, 7 years longer than that, I suppose. Yeah.
I can understand the sort of feeling of joy that you might get from training a person, because I myself was a teacher once upon a time, and it's really nice to see people sort of grow in their positions and things. And I guess that's what inspired you to write The Effective Ecologist. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, my background professionally, before I was, call it a professional ecologist, professional bat person, my background before that was almost 26, 27 years working in service sector businesses. And ecological consultancies are they're quite simple business models. They're service sector businesses by and large. And a lot of the stuff that I learned, a lot of the stuff that was taught to me by people that I used to work for and the insurance company that I spent the bulk of my time working in, a lot of that stuff is stuff that would apply across many business models, but especially any service sector business model. So, you know, I've made an awful lot of mistakes. I still do. But I remember when I was in my late teens, right through my 20s, well into my 30s, working for that massive insurance company, I learned so much about service, customer care, being productive in a department that was focusing on whatever aspect of service, customer service that department was delivering. And I made many, many mistakes, and I got much guidance, and also created things in my own head as well that I found beneficial to me. And what I found in the ecology sector, when I started in the ecology sector, what I found there was the sector was full of people who were technically brilliant, really knowledgeable about the things that they did, be that bats or birds or vegetation or whatever. The knowledge that most of these people had was just, you know, awesome. It was immense. But very few, or, you know, a very small percentage of people in our sector has actually been given any sort of training on non-technical subjects. So, you know, you go into a room full of ecologists and you say, hey, tomorrow there's a badger course. Who wants to go on the badger course? And they're all, yeah, me boss, I want to go on the badger course. And you go in the same room and you say, who wants to go on a time management course or a customer care course or a negotiating skills course? And everybody's got their heads down and they take the thought that either they don't need to know about that stuff, or they think they are really good at that stuff, that there's nothing that anybody else can tell them about it. And in some cases, that is possibly accurate, but in many cases, I see people doing things, or rather not doing things, that would actually stand them in much better way if they just considered the non-technical aspects of what they were doing as seriously as the technical aspects. So having helped, I suppose, many people over a number of years with some of this stuff, kind of got pretty passionate about thinking, is there something I can do to help people understand better how to be better organized, how to be better at timekeeping, the sort of things to think about when they start working in a service sector business, how to engage with their boss, or if you're the boss, how to engage with your staff. And all of this seems quite, how can I put it? I suppose what I'm trying to think about here, with what I'm trying to say, I don't have the answer for everybody all of the time. And anybody that's worked for me, either alongside me or for me in my previous business, will know that I am not perfect, and they will know that I get things wrong, and they will know that I do stuff that I potentially or definitely shouldn't do or shouldn't say. But that doesn't mean that I haven't realized that I've made mistakes, and it doesn't mean that through having made mistakes that I can't then use the experience of those mistakes to try and encourage others not to do the same stupid thing that I did, for example. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm trying to kind of put across here.
Well,
I
you
ain't
can only
perfect.
be human, can't you?
Absolutely.
Everybody's going to make
Absolutely.
mistakes. It's
Yeah.
like you say, it's the ability to actually sit back away from the situation and reflect on it, and then say, "Hey, I could have probably done that better,"
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
change the way that you do things.
Somebody once said to me on a training course, and I remember their name, but I won't say their name because that wouldn't be fair.
Yeah.
They said to me in front of the room, don't ever learn anything from someone that's never made a mistake. And at that point, I thought, oh my goodness, you've definitely come to the right guy, because I've made a lot of mistakes. And I think for me, that is the difference between technical knowledge and experience. Yeah. Someone can know an awful lot about a subject, yeah, but they don't have any experience with actually doing the subject. And it's not until you actually start doing the thing that you've learned about or you've read about, it's not until you start doing that and you then start making mistakes or potentially anticipating what might go wrong if you do things in a certain way, and then maybe changing what it was you were about to do in order to avoid something bad happening. It's not until you actually go through that kind of problem-solving, non-standard scenario. Here is something that wasn't in the book or wasn't in the course, and how am I going to work it out? It's not until you start doing that that you actually start building upon what I would describe as experience. Yeah, and you only really get experience through trial and error.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I don't know if I said this in the book or if I wrote this in a blog once, but no one learned anything from an easy day at work.
Yeah.
If you've got an easy day at work, where what you've done is what you've always done, and there were no problems, you haven't learned anything. You're no further forward than what you were at 8:30 this morning, come 5 o'clock tonight. You may be a lot less stressed,
Yeah.
but you haven't actually developed anything any further in that respect.
Yeah. What would you say one of your mistakes was that you wish you hadn't done, or it's that cruel question?
Yeah, I've got so many, but I'll tell you what my major Achilles heel is. All right, and this is something that has followed me my entire professional life. Yeah, is I am not very good at faces and names. All right, so I will I'll see somebody's face and I'll know that I'll know them, but I won't remember their name. Or I'll know somebody's name and I'll know that I've met them before, but I'll have forgotten what they look like. So I write about one or two of these things in the various books. If I say various, there's only been 3 books, but I've certainly written about one of those scenarios in the Is That a Bat book, and I think there's at least one of the stories relating to that sort of thing in the Effective Ecologist book. I have done some things where I haven't recognized someone where you just want the floor to open up and swallow you. Totally mortifying.
You almost need a wingman to sort of go around with you and sort of nudge you and be like, "Hey, that's Bob."
Well, something. I'm sure she won't mind. I'm sure she won't mind me saying this, but Laura Carter Davis, who's now the owner and the managing director of Echoes, she used to be that person. She used to be the person that kind of followed behind me or alongside me, rather, most of the time at courses or business meetings, kind of whispering in my ear, right, that's Bob, no, that's Anne, that's John.
Brilliant.
And the reason she did that is because Laura had on 1 or 2 occasions had been with me where I had made a complete prat of myself because I'd forgotten somebody's name or their face. And she then thought, if I'm ever with him anywhere, I'm going to make sure he does not embarrass himself or me by doing that again. So, so a little bit of that goes on. Yeah.
I can understand, because with like a group of, I only had about 10 or 12 students in a class, but some of them I really just couldn't remember, and I always just remembered the ones that like were naughty.
Right,
So
yeah. Yeah.
it's kind of bad that you don't remember the good ones.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, what did you teach, by the way? I never asked you, what did you teach?
Oh, a range of things. So I taught at Middleton College, and so I taught everybody from entry level, so that's people with learning difficulties, up to the sort of foundation degree level. And it was plant science, research methods, that sort of thing, statistics, horticulture in the main.
Okay, no, wow,
Yeah.
wow. Well, a little technique I learned years ago, because I used to do before the pandemic. Pretty much every week I would be in a business somewhere doing something where I would have a room of people, from
Yeah.
one or two people up to 20, 30 people. And the thing that I did religiously, and I'll continue to do if we ever get the opportunity to do face-to-face training again. At the very beginning, when people are introducing themselves, I always had a table plan, a blank table plan on my desk in front of me, and I would write the people's names in according to where they were sitting. And that's just something that I've done for a long time. And it's because I know I'm going to, in the heat of a debate or a conversation, I'm going to forget somebody's name. And it's horrible to do that to someone.
Yeah,
It really
it
is. It really is. And if anybody's listening out there and I've ever done that to you, I am so, so sorry. And I'll know that I've done it, and I will have given myself an immensely hard time about it. Okay. I apologize. I'm sorry. Yeah. Back to you, Julia.
I used to do the same thing with the crib sheet, but then I sort of learnt to pick up on characteristics of people. So you sort of link an image to who they are, and then you do actually remember them quite effectively that way. But talking of pandemics, how would you say someone could be most effective in a disruptive time like this?
Look, I think with something like that, I've been in businesses in the past, and when we had the stock market crash, whatever you call it, which was around about 2008, when I was running Echoes at that point, Echoes was less than 2 years old at that point. And in a different kind of way, that was very disruptive in a business environment. And I'd already gone through something similar for different reasons in a departmental situation in the insurance company. And for me, when all of this kicked off just over a year ago, look, it's totally horrendous. And, none of us can come up with enough adjectives to say how bad it's been and how terrible it's been. For those people directly involved. I've been very fortunate. I haven't been directly involved from the point of view that I haven't lost any family or anything like that. But from a pure business point of view, at the very beginning of this, before we knew how bad it was going to be and how long it was going to last, for me, it was pretty straightforward, because it was kind of, right, what does a business do when the marketplace collapses, or you lose your biggest customer, or something like that? And for me, there's certain things. And I think first thing is, don't spend too much time being upset or being frustrated about what you can't do or you're no longer able to do. You've got to very quickly move away from that and focus on what you can do. And there are lots of things in many businesses that they are not normally able to do because they're too darn busy. And for me, 12 months ago was an opportunity for businesses like that to start thinking about rebuilding themselves, or rebuilding processes, procedures, staff development, product ranges, service ranges, revisiting, things like invoicing processes, tendering processes. There's so much that you can be doing, whether you're in an office or you're stuck at home or anything like that. And I suppose this is what some people, including myself, would describe as controllables. So worry about the stuff that you can control, focus on the stuff that you can do. Yeah, because I think in certain sectors, which have undoubtedly had it hugely bad, I'm thinking like leisure sector, entertainment sectors, for example, it must be so hard for that type of business to not just sit at home and from a business sense, just really feel quite down and feel quite sorry for themselves and feel quite helpless, and lots of other words that that could describe that situation. But for a service sector business, with the technology that we all have access to, should we choose to use it, there are so many opportunities, unfortunately, created because of the sadness of what everybody was going through. So I think that's how I would view that. And I think if you're sitting here 12 months later and you're sitting in a service sector business, and what your business looks like today and what you're doing today and what your 6-month, 2-year plan from this moment forward, if that is no different to what it was 12 months ago, in other words, you haven't done anything, you have missed a massive opportunity, and you only miss that opportunity once without realizing that you wished you could go back in time and maybe say to yourself, okay, there was a whole lot of things I could have been doing that I potentially haven't been doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's what I would be, that's how I thought about it myself. And, something for me, very fortunately, because I've been through disasters in the past, we're back to the experience again.
Yeah.
I pretty much knew, okay, this is what we need to do. This is what we're going to do. In the last 12 months, we've launched new products. We've launched new services. We've got a new pricing structure. We've changed office. We've moved from having an office environment that in effect was a face-to-face training centre where we could accommodate courses. We're now in a room that's about a quarter the size. It's 60% less rent, etc., etc.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. It's about taking stock and then remaining flexible and trying to keep resilient.
And moving quickly. And
thinking quickly. That's one of my perhaps one of my sort of downfalls that I used to have is I used to sort of stagnate in a position too much because I was indecisive about what I wanted to do rather than just going for what my gut tells me to do, basically. I'm very
So you said something there, and it's a couple of thoughts, and I've said this quite a few times to people in business or people in teams. One expression that I really like, is don't make the perfect the enemy of the good.
That's right.
And there are too many occasions in the business world, and it's usually the leaders within a business that are maybe like this, where they don't want to quite do something just yet because it's not perfect. And if it's 85% good enough, then it will never be perfect. And kind of linked to that is, it's almost like once you get to that point where you know that you're going to make a decision and you know that you've got to do something, it might be knocking on doors, or whatever it is, there comes a point where you just got to say, just do it. Just whatever you do, just get out there and do something. Because if you do something, you're at least creating the opportunity that something good is going to happen. Whereas if you just sit in the office working out to the nth degree how you're going to do this thing, and you keep putting it off and you keep procrastinating, nothing outside of that room you're sitting in is going to change because no one has got the message. So yeah, that's kind of how I would feel about those things. Don't make the perfect the enemy of the good. And once it's good enough, do something. Don't hang around. Do something, because nothing will happen unless you do something.
Yeah, totally agree with that. I was writing my thesis, or I wasn't writing my thesis because I was thinking in my brain how I might write this thing. But one of my supervisors said, just write anything, just even if it's a load of garbage, you can go back and edit it later. Just write and get into the habit of doing it. So I guess that goes for anything, really.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like that example.
So with your book then, what would you say your 3 key things are for being effective?
Right, so as you've probably gathered by now, trying to narrow me down to just 3, Julia?
Yeah, why not?
Why not, yeah.
It's a bit of a challenge.
A bit of a challenge.
Just something for people to take into their day, like at the start of the morning.
Yeah. Okay, so I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff, and you're not the first person that's asked me, my top tip or my top 5 tips or my top 3 tips. And there are so many to choose from. And we'll ignore tip number 1, which would be buy the book. Okay, so let's put that to the side. But I think first tip is time management. Now, I can't really give a concise approach to time management. That means that all of your time management problems disappear. But I'm going to say something about why time is important and why time is the most valuable thing that we all have. Yeah. So I could back transfer to you right now £1 million. Okay, Julia? Yeah.
Okay. Go for it.
But you can't use that £1 million to buy me back the last 45 minutes that we've spent talking. Yeah. Okay. I could send you 20 million quid and you can't buy back the last 45 minutes of your life. And that's the point I'm making from that perspective. So on the basis that time is valuable beyond the ability that anybody has to pay for the time that's already passed, it does concern me when I see people not necessarily using time to its most effective. Now, we all need downtime, we all need sleep, we all need holidays, we all need things that we do to relax. But by the same token, we can all get much better at turning the time that we have into something that is beneficial in whatever way someone wants to define beneficial. So I'm not necessarily meaning financially beneficial. It could be emotionally beneficial. It could be physically beneficial. Because once that moment's passed, it ain't coming back again. Yeah. So time is precious. Don't waste it. And that leads me on to the second point. And this is a fairly modern thing, I would suggest. And it's a thing that occurs predominantly with the younger generations than myself. And people these days just don't appreciate the value of a paper diary. Some people don't even appreciate the value of any sort of diary. And that makes me very, very nervous when I see that in any sort of service sector business environment. People without diaries, people without pens, people without paper, that makes me very nervous. And when I'm talking about a diary, a paper diary, in other words, just a normal diary that you would buy off a shelf at W.H. Smith or wherever, you should think about it as being more than just somewhere where you record the time that your dentist appointment is, or when your appraisal is, or when the meeting with the client is. You should actually take the time and the space within that diary to document all aspects of what potentially is going to impact upon what you're trying to achieve or what you're doing with your time on any particular day. So, for example, Julie, if we take this situation here, yeah, I've known for a number of weeks that we were going to have this conversation today, and in my paper diary, we've got whatever time it was this afternoon, a Zoom meeting with yourself. And I think that's pretty good. I think where I take it one stage further is 2 days ago, I had an entry in the diary alerting me to the fact that I was going to have this interview with you today. And also stapled to that page of that diary, I had the list of 1 or 2 of the questions that you told me in advance that you're going to ask me. Yeah, all in the same place. And that gave me the opportunity over the last couple of days to think about what was coming up a day, 2 days later. Now, I worry when people, first of all, wouldn't have that in a diary at all, and they would maybe be relying on some electronic beep to remind them that hey, the meeting's coming up in 15 minutes. And I also think that someone who doesn't view the diary as a time management organizational essential aid that could actually be used to make them more effective and more efficient. I think someone that doesn't take that extra step is missing a trick. They really are missing a trick. So that's my second thing. And the last thing I'm going to say, which is number 3, is document it. Anytime you have a business conversation with anybody, so boss with a member of staff, staff with a boss, business with a customer, business with a supplier, anything that's got any sort of substance to it in terms of what needs to be delivered or when it needs to be delivered or who said what to whom, anything like that, document it. And it's so easy to do. When I was in my 20s, we would have to dictate a letter that went to a typing pool that then came back to you a day later with a mistake on it, which then had to be corrected by going back to the typing pool, which then went back to you, which then went in a post box, which then landed in the customer's, office 2 days later. Okay, that's what life was like, 40 years ago, for argument's sake. It is so easy today with email. After a conversation you've had with a customer, for example, just to say, hey, John or Jane, really nice talking to you earlier this afternoon. Just to recap what we talked about, you said you wanted the phase 1 report for that site completed by 5 o'clock on the 29th of April. It's in writing what you agreed. And if John or Jane then comes to you on the 25th of April and tells you, well, when I spoke to you on the phone, you said it would be ready by now, you've actually protected yourself. You've actually sent in the email that documents what it was that you agreed. And that is a lovely recipe for the avoidance of doubt, for the avoidance of miscommunication, for keeping customer relationships on a very high level, and also keeping relationships between team members and the hierarchies within a business at a very, very healthy level. And it makes me very nervous when I see people that just randomly believe that the person that they're talking to has heard and understood everything exactly the same way that they have, and at some stage in the future, that conversation is not going to come back and hurt somebody in some way. It's a controllable. You choose what you want to do. Choose to leave things to fate and hope that nothing bad ever happens, or choose to take control and be professional, and and life will be a much less stressful place, I would generally suggest. So there you go, 3 things. How long did that take me? 25 minutes?
Brilliant. I think you've got it spot on, really. All of those things resonate with me, particularly the 2 last ones. Well, actually all of them, to be honest. But Yeah, I read somewhere that if you actually write something down as well, physically, the action of writing on paper helps you actually remember it. It affects your brain in some sort of different way to typing it. So
okay. I can. It's not something I've heard, but I can understand why that would work. That could certainly work for some people. Yeah, that could certainly work for some people. Yeah,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Good stuff. Right. What's next? Anything else?
I don't know. Oh, I've got a bit of a fun one here. What would you name
Okay.
the autobiography of your life? Apart from the effective ecologist, that's taken.
Well, no, I'm probably more like the ineffective author or something like that. Yeah.
You're not allowed to be that either.
Yeah. I kind of had an idea that you were going to ask me something along those lines, and I had a little bit of a think about it, and also asked my wife, my wife Aileen, what she thought, and she came up with a few things, some of which I wouldn't be able to say out loud, to be fair. But so things like, it's never dull, or there's always a story, or something like that. But I had a little bit to think about it though, because I thought, I think I come across as a reasonably confident, reasonably kind of stable kind of person. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I think some people, and I think this happens when you do things like, if you write a book, people then think, oh, he's written a book or she's written a book. They must be really, I don't know, special,
Serious,
important, knowledgeable, experienced. I don't know. Different people would have different perceptions on that. And I've kind of got to say that that's definitely not how I view myself. And I think about Aileen, my wife, who's we've been together for 13, 14 years, and she's been with me when some of these things that have been happening regarding the changes in the business and the books and the training products that we've launched and stuff like this. And I think the thing I would say is, when you have an idea, and we'll take the effective ecologist as an example, since that's what you want to talk about today. When it pops into your head, I'm going to try and do something with this information, and I don't quite know what it's going to be, and I don't quite know what it's going to look like at the end, and I'm not sure if anybody's going to be interested in it. I'm not sure if a publisher's going to, if it's a book, I'm not sure if a publisher's going to think it's going to be something that's worth them investing their time and their resources in, and stuff like that. When you're at the very start of that process, whatever it is, for me, it's a very uncomfortable place to be. For me, it's a very uncertain place. For me, it's the beginning of something that I might spend a lot of time and a lot of thought on that doesn't actually go anywhere. And there have certainly been projects like that, things that nobody knows about because so far in, it was decided it wouldn't work, or it was a bad idea, or whatever. But at that very early days, it's uncomfortable. You're not full of yourself. You're not thinking this is fabulous. You're not thinking this is going to be amazing. You're not thinking that anybody, let alone everybody, you're not thinking that anybody's going to be interested in it. And you're potentially thinking that you're going to make a complete prat of yourself, for argument's sake, either in terms of damage to your personality or damage to your brand or damage, amongst your friends or your colleagues or whatever. So, all of this stuff is there, and it's the great unknown. And I think many, many people probably avoid doing certain things, especially in a professional life, because they're afraid of getting it wrong or making a mistake or it not being successful. And I suppose I got myself in a situation, very luckily, if we're talking about the books, with the first book, the Social Calls book, where myself and Keith and Andy, who are working on that project with me, we just decided, we're going to do this. And if it doesn't matter if no one else is interested, we're kind of doing it because we want to do it, and because we want to put together what we think we know about that particular subject matter. And if only 3 people that are interested in this or read this stuff is just myself, Keith, and Andy,